Kearns woman, already charged with forging checks from a local trucking company, is now facing charges that she illegally billed customers of another company. Prosecutors charge Anna Garcia with communications fraud today. Charging documents say while working for Les Olson Company in South Salt Lake, Garcia set up a PayPal account and sent customers fake invoices. And a judge ordered.
Welcome back, YouTube. It's time to begin unveiling this entire story. Today, I'm going to talk about the girl in the MugShot. Now, it's not a pretty MugShot. This is a news article that was ran by my local news station when I lived back in the States on all my crimes. And these are the crimes that ultimately led to my deportation. Straight up, let's talk about the crimes, what I did, and what got me deported, the chain of events that led to my deportation, how I ended up with ICE on their radar, in their custody, and eventually on a plane back to Mexico. I wasn't always this open about talking about my felonies, about my crimes. I carried a lot of shame for a long time, you know, because I was labeled as a thief, as a scammer, a fraudster, a liar, deceitful, all the words that come with somebody that has stolen money. So my crimes are white-collar crimes. They're considered financial crimes that are non-violent. I developed a pattern of stealing money from my employers. That's the easiest way I can explain it. The news article that was conveniently ran that I will now use in this segment will give you a detailed breakdown of what happened, what I was charged with, what I pled guilty to. And today I'm going to give you my side of the story. It doesn't vary much from what's in that article. What's in that article is somewhat factual. And at the time that news article was ran, I thought my entire life was ruined. And to this day, that news article has cost me a lot, from losing jobs, just embarrassment, shame. I was convicted of several second-degree felonies for white-collar crimes, from wrongful appropriation, communications fraud, theft by deception, all types of fancy names. But it really came down to the same behavior, which was I was stealing money from my employers. A lot of people have asked me why. Why would you do that? Why would you risk your green card? Why, why? So let's take it back a little bit. I actually lacked a lot of awareness on my immigration situation and how delicate it was as a green card holder. It's $600 to apply for my citizenship. Why am I going to spend $600 when I have a green card? I can legally work, I can legally travel. What's the big deal? So I never pursued citizenship. I became very complacent with my green card. I knew it had to be renewed every 10 years or so. I viewed it as like renewing a license, or you know what I mean? Something very just paperwork, just identifying documentation. Deportation had never hit close to me, and I lacked awareness on topics that didn't affect me personally, such as immigration, such as being undocumented, deportation, all of that. And had I been aware of all those things and the severity and how fragile my state was, perhaps I would have made different decisions. But I didn't. What I did was I engaged in a pattern of criminal activity, stealing money from my employers. What was I doing with the money? I was supporting my children. I was supporting myself. The first time that I did it, I remember I had received a notice that my water was going to be shut off. I was reported by a fellow coworker and charged, taken to court, pled guilty. And I remember when I pled guilty, I had a LDA, legal defender. She explained some small part about we're required to tell you that pleading guilty to these charges could result in something of your green card, aka your green card can be taken away. And I was like, yeah, just let me sign. The plea agreement was me avoiding jail time. So all I saw in that plea agreement was, okay, that means I don't have to go to jail, sign. And I signed. And that was my first felony at the age of 21 for wrongful appropriation. Now remember the plea deal that was given to me. My lawyer did work it in a way that it wasn't considered an aggravated felony, and it wasn't, meaning I was sentenced to a term of 364 days in jail that was suspended. Anything over 365 is considered an aggravated sentence, something along those lines. And then that's when immigration can come in. So on that first charge, Nothing huge really happened to me. They slapped me on the wrist. They said this could result in your deportation, place some restitution, do some classes, done deal. I got off probation, or court order probation, in about 4 years, and I moved on with my life. I look back on that time and I realized that it was something that I began out of need and that I continued as a pattern of greed. In the beginning, it was just to pay the water bill, the light bill, the gas in my car. But of course, greed quickly became a part of that as well. So moving on, after that happened, I still didn't fully understand how lucky I had just gotten, that ICE didn't pick me up, that I wasn't deported, that my green card was still valid. Some time later, my mom took me to meet with an immigration lawyer, and he told me, you will not be able to renew your card with this charge. You need 10 years of good behavior, and then we can apply to renew. But you need the 10 years of good behavior. Your green card will still be good. It will not be revoked, but you will not be able to renew it. And once it expires, you won't be able to prove that you're a permanent resident. So it means you will maybe struggle with renewing your license. You cannot leave the US. And all these things that he, told me had changed because of this. And that's kind of when I started realizing oh, this might be kind of serious. I might kind of fucked up. At this point, I have 4 kids and I'm pregnant. I had, again, at that time in my life, began to steal money from a different employer that I was working for at that time. So the only thing that I can really connect with those 2 crimes is that it was during a time of need, or a time of financial struggle. So I quit that job, and once I quit that job, Walter and I just completely split up. And it was a very ugly split. I mean, it involved a domestic charge, it involved restraining order, it involved police, it involved courts, it involved a nasty ex, it involved his family. And to top it off, I was 3 months pregnant with my youngest baby. So when I tell you that I was not mentally well at the time, I wasn't mentally well. I was dealing with a lot of court cases, a lot of shit from Walter, his family. I mean, back and forth cases. I was broke. I needed to find a way to make money. I was unemployed. I couldn't find a job because these charges. It was a crazy, crazy time for me. So I came upon these checks, went to the bank, cashed a bunch of them, and I was arrested the same night. The money got given back to him the same night, but it was a huge deal. They came to my house. They had cops all the way down my street. My children were there. They had a search warrant. And I mean, I got caught red-handed. And at the time, I was probably 4 or 5 months pregnant. So that's in this mugshot that you guys see in this article. This is when I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant with my youngest baby. It was about 4 in the morning. My house had just been ransacked. So that night was the beginning of my rock bottom. I was obviously involved in a lot of criminal activity, even things I have never been charged with. It was a very, very dark time in my life, very dark. I had done wrong against a lot of people, and a lot of people had also done wrong against me. It was just a cycle that I feel like I was going back and forth with karma, And that night, I remember when I climbed at the back of that cop car, it was so familiar to me because as a teen, I'll talk about this in another episode, but as a teen, I spent years in the juvenile justice system. I was arrested several times. I've been in the back of cop cars many, many, many times. I've been in jail, or kid jail, many, many times, but I'd never actually been to jail. So I was on my way to the big house that night. I'll tell you what I had planned. In my mind, I knew all along I was going to get caught for all these financial crimes at some point. It's not something you can get away with. But in my mind, I was so desperate to flee, to get away from Walter, from his family. I remember telling myself, I'm gonna get this money, I'm gonna go to Arizona. I had already gotten an apartment in Arizona. I got a U-Haul. My family was gonna help me move to Arizona. They had no idea what the fuck was going on, but I had convinced them that I needed to move and that I was ready to go back to Arizona. And I was gonna have this baby there and start my life over. But in my mind, I knew that I wanted to go have the baby, and then I would come back and deal with all these charges. Because when I was cashing those checks, guys, I was giving the bank my fingerprint. So I knew it was going to trace back to me. But in such a desperate state that I was just I need this now so I can get from point A to point B, and I'll come back and I'll deal with the consequences later. That was my thinking. Obviously very, very fucked up thinking, very selfish, very self-centered. I victimized people in the process. Doesn't matter why. I became the aggressor. And I think that was one of the hardest things to accept, to acknowledge at the time, was that I was the perpetrator. I was the bad guy. It didn't matter if I had good intentions. It didn't matter if I was trying to feed my kids. It didn't matter what I was doing with this money. I was a criminal. And I had to identify with that. And I had such a hard time to come to terms with it because, you know, I had been doing it for so long. Not just financial crimes, but I felt like I was a criminal since I was 12. But it hit me differently when I was in that state, so vulnerable, pregnant, alone, no man to back me up. My family had no idea what I was into. You know, my kids had just been taken from me in front of the police. I mean, it's a rock bottom that's even hard to talk about. And so I went to jail for 2 nights. By the grace of God, my bail was posted. Within like 2 hours of me bailing out, ICE came to my door. ICE was knocking and they were asking questions, and I was able to show them that I was a legal permanent resident. And, you know, they had seen my background with my prior cases, which weren't deportable, but this one was. And so they said, what's going to happen? They told me, we don't typically arrest pregnant women, as I was evidently pregnant. But he also said, because you do have legal standing and you have not been convicted yet, we have to wait and see where these charges go. If you're convicted, then we will be back. I was under so much pressure, you know, at the time from the police, ICE, these cases with my baby daddy, with his family. I had a child custody case. I had stalking cases open. I had vandalism cases open because I had slashed his his girlfriend's tires. I mean, I had a lot of shit just mounting up against me, so much that I was just like, Mom, I don't know what to do. And I was scared. I was scared for my pregnancy. I was scared for what would happen when she was born. Would I be around? Would she be taken from me? Would I be going to prison? I had so many thoughts in my mind. I had nightmares of her being born in prison. I was trying so hard to give my kids everything and to have their own house and their own rooms and be able to take them on trips and all these things. And I ended up back in my mom's basement in 2 rooms, cramped up. And I have no idea what's going to happen, where our future lies at this point. It's a really dark time for me. It's a very humbling time because honestly, at the time of my crimes, I did think I could beat the system. I did think I could find the loopholes and you know, cash in quick and get this money and not get caught or just get slapped on the wrist, whatever. So I'm pregnant with living in my mom's house, and now it's time to go to court. I was put on, I wasn't put on anything yet, but I was going to court. I hired an attorney by the name of Corey Wall. He was also the attorney that I hired for my custody case. So while I'm beginning to go to court, I'm starting to realize that deportation is in the near future for me. Like, I knew I can't beat these cases because I'm guilty, and whatever best case scenario, I will not come out with a slap on the wrist. Like, I knew deportation was in hindsight. And my mom, my mom and I talked about, like, why don't you just leave to Mexico? I felt so guilty as a mother for the fuck ups, like everything my kids saw of me going to jail, our house getting ransacked. I mean, my kids knew what was going on, you know. And I felt like if I just take off and run, what am I teaching them? You know, I began to go to therapy during the time that I was, you know, going to court. When I moved back in with my mom, I started going to therapy, one-on-one sessions. I got a psych eval. I was getting some help sorting through everything that was going on in my life. And one of the things that really hit me to my core was my motherhood, that I had these 4 little babies that had this mess of a mom. And I just remember thinking and telling my therapist, it's not that you fuck up that matters, it's how you fix it, what you do afterwards that really makes who you are. You know, and at that time, my news article had been released shortly after I got out of jail. I was trying to find work and I couldn't because of that news article. When I tell you that news article made my life impossible, I was drowning. You know, I was out on bail. I had these 4 kids to feed and I couldn't find work anywhere. And so I couldn't provide. I was struggling so fucking bad, so bad to find a job. I remember I started looking into working in the legal field. I had a huge interest for paralegal work. I was working with my attorney at the time through my own custody case, and I was helping him draft all my paperwork. And I really began to get good at it. I was like, I could be maybe like a paralegal, right? So I went and I interviewed at a couple places, and Salt Lake is really small. And at the time, the father of my kids, his girlfriend, worked in the legal field. So every time I would go interview, you know, she would let them know, hey, this is who she is, like, don't hire her. I didn't know what to do. I was trying so hard to redeem myself. I knew I had done wrong, like utterly wrong. I was going to all of my court dates, and let me tell you, those court dates were fucking scary. I was walking in there pregnant each time, not knowing if I would, like, what was gonna happen. I didn't understand the criminal justice system either at the time. So anyway, we go through all my custody proceedings for the case, and I pled guilty. I had two lawyers at the time. I had my criminal lawyer, and I had my immigration lawyer. Then we walked into court on my sentencing day, and let me tell you that I was prepared to go to prison that day. The victims had written letters. They had showed up to court to give victim impact statements. My baby daddy had written letters to my judge. His family wrote letters to my judge of why I should be imprisoned. I mean, I went in there completely like ready. I made arrangements for my kids. I left all my account passwords. This is how much money's here. This is how much money's there. This is do this with my car. I knew it was time. It was fucking time. Like, I have done time before as a kid. I did a lot of time, and whether it was juvie or detention. So it was almost like programming myself to go back into the system, and I was ready. Now it's worth noting that the judge allowed me to have my baby before sentencing. You know, my lawyer petitioned and said she's pregnant, let her have her baby, let's postpone this, and they did. So I went to sentencing when my baby was 6 weeks old. 6 weeks, and she was full-time nursing. So it was a painful day for me because I said bye to my kids, and I told my oldest daughter what was happening in kid terms, that I had fucked up, that I had to go face the judge, and that I had to face the consequences, and that I may not be home for some time. And she cried, and I cried, and it was time to face the music. And those moments are so so important to me, because those are the moments that made me change. Those were the painful, scary, uncomfortable moments, and those moments are why I stopped doing what I was doing. Among other things, obviously. But when we're going through things, you know, nothing changes if nothing changes. And usually we change because something happens that impacts us severely. And for me, it was what I was doing to my kids. I was seeing what my actions was doing to my kids. So we walk into court. It was very intimidating. It was very humbling. I mean, I was there to be judged and sentenced, you know. And leading up to my sentencing, I had done a lot of work. I had gone to therapy, I had gone to THEB classes, I had gone to parenting classes, I had enrolled in school, I had found a job. I was working as a receptionist at a little boat shop. No access to money, just making phone calls. I was making $13 an hour. And this is how I was paying for my attorneys and feeding my kids with the help of my mom largely as well. I had put in a lot of fucking work to present myself as someone that was ready for fucking change. And if that meant prison time and jail time, then so be it. I was ready. And everybody gave their speeches, the defendant or the victims, my lawyers, the state wanted me to go to jail, prison. And because, and APMP, so adult probation and parole, had done a pre-sentence report, which they look into your entire background from a child. So everything I had done as a juvie was also looked into. It went against me with this pre-sentence report. And the recommendations are so important because 9 times out of 10, the judges go by those recommendations. So they recommended that I go to prison for 6 months. Now, keep in mind, I was looking at 10 second-degree felonies, and they each carried, I believe it was like 5 to life on each count. So the jail time that was being recommended wasn't huge, but we knew right off the bat that if I landed in jail convicted of these crimes, ICE would put a hold on me, and after I did my jail time, I would then be deported. By that point, I mean, I had an immigration lawyer. I had caught myself up to speed. I was no longer this idiot lacking awareness as to how delicate my situation was. I knew I was royally fucked. And anyway, this panned out. But I was ready. I was ready to take it on. I was honestly like wanted it all to end so bad. I just wanted them to tell me what was going to happen, because I spent months not knowing what was going to happen to me, if I was going to prison, when I was going to prison, for how long, when I was going to Mexico, if I was going to Mexico. I just needed answers. And that judgment day was like a huge relief. Regardless of what was happening, I was almost relieved to go to prison, because I was so ready for everything to end. The court cases, the unknown, the what's happening. It was so fucking stressful. If you've ever gone through a court case, you know what I'm talking about. So when we walked in there and everybody gave their speeches and I was like ready to, you know, cuff me up, lace me up, let's go, the judge decided that no jail time. He gave me all these, you know, you're gonna be on probation for this long, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, but I don't see you as prison material. And let me tell you, when he said that, I felt like my entire body was tingling, and I felt like my knees were gonna buckle, because for so long, you know, everybody had an opinion on what I did. When my news article hit, you know, everybody was talking how I was this terrible person. It was all over Facebook. People I knew and grew up with, even my friends, were sharing it, commenting. And wow, well, like, can you fucking believe this? They had my mugshot all over social media. I was being ridiculed by girls I had drama with. I mean, it was really bad. So when that judge, right, he's the judge. He gets to judge and say and whatever. So when he like showed mercy, despite all the ugly things I had done, I felt like this is my second chance. You know, I went through all these court dates. I faced everything. I did everything they wanted me to. The money got returned. This is it. This is the end of it. I get to start over. Second opportunity. I'm not going to prison, so ICE isn't going to come get me. You know, we had this plan. I was eligible for a U visa. So that was, you know, our case, that as soon as we got these criminal cases put behind me, we were going to pursue the U visa. We were going to work on my immigration stuff. You know, maybe I had some time to fix what I had fucked up. Immediately after my sentencing, I went home. I mean, I have my baby, I have my kids, and I really remember talking to myself, like, this is it, bitch. Like, we're getting it together. We're going to fix this mess. Like, it's okay. You fucked up. You went through all this. You did all these things, but you faced the judge. You faced the consequences. You faced the victims. You listened to what they said. You showed up in court. You were judged. You were sentenced. And that's it. That's fucking it. Like, I remember just feeling very empowered. Like, I really got beat down as an individual when I was charged with these things and when I went public. So when I got past my sentencing, you know, I was placed on probation. I had to do health assessments. I had to do drug screening. I had to do mental health screening. I had to do classes. I mean, I hit the ground fucking running. I knew how lucky I was to not have gone to prison. There was a lot of people upset with that sentence. There was a lot of people who were upset that I wasn't taken to prison. And I understand. I understand, because if I was on the other side, maybe judging, if I was the victim, I would be upset too. And everybody's entitled to have their opinion to these crimes. But on sentencing day, I was set free. I was done, like, dwelling and, damn, you fucked up and you're such a shitty person. I remember that day was the end of how unkind I was to myself, how hard I was on myself for these crimes that I had committed. And I began my journey on adult probation and parole. I completed almost all of my classes within 6 weeks. And the only thing that was left was really the time. I had to spend 4 years on court probation, and I was ready to do it. I was like, this is my new life. I mean, I'm gonna be reporting, but you know, I don't do drugs. My life was just centered around my kids. My baby was still really little. I was nursing her, so I was doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. So when my house was, when they served a search warrant on my house, they took a lot of property from me. They took my phone, they took documents, they took my purse, they took a lot of things from my home. Well, now that my court case had been adjudicated, I could not retrieve that property. And I was working with the West Valley City Police Department, Detective Black to be exact. He probably still remembers me. During this time, I was also involved in a lot of cases with the father of my kids. He had cases against me, I had cases against him. Now, the West Valley City Police Department really looked at me like this criminal. And they were working with the father of my kids and his family that had convinced them that I was just this piece of shit person. And maybe I was with some of the things that I had done. But they teamed up, the West Valley City Police Department and the father of my kids and his family teamed up with ICE. And I went to the police station one day to pick up the property that had been taken from me. I was actually on my way to a class. It was one of my probation classes across the street. And I was like, oh, the police department's right here. Like, I'll just go pick up my phone they took from me, my bag. And I remember thinking, if I get my phone, like, I can sell it, because I had already replaced it, you know, and I was still really broke. So like, I'll go pick up my phone, I'll sell it, and there's $400 or $500 I could use for my kids. Thinking, you know, nothing bad could happen. Like, I've already went through my cases. There's no warrants out for me. I'm taking care of everything that I'm supposed to be doing. This property is to be returned to me. So I go to the police station, and I'm at the front desk. I'm like, hey, I'm just here to pick up this property from this case. Here's my ID. I brought all the court documents. This case has been adjudicated. You guys are good to release my property to me now, because it was being held as evidence. And I remember the lady kept stalling, and I just kept thinking, like, hey, like, I gotta go, like, I have a class to catch. And she's like, oh yeah, no, they just have to run across the street really quick. And I remember they're taking forever and just making me wait. And I just remember saying, you know what, I'll come back for it. They're like, no, like, don't leave, they almost got it, they'll be right here with your property. And I was like, okay. You know who they were waiting for? ICE. The detective over my case had received a bunch of stuff from the family from my baby dad's family. And when I showed up to pick up my property, they called ICE. I guess they were probably banking on me going to prison, and when I didn't, they thought, how else can we fucking get rid of her? Let's call ICE. So while I was waiting for my property, they were setting me up to be picked up by ICE. I showed up, and I remember, so at the time my baby is still nursing, she's really little, and I had my breast pump with me on the side for some reason. And they showed up, and it was the same agent that had showed up to my house when I bailed out. And he's like, do you remember we told you we would be back? And I said, yes, I did. And I just started crying because I felt like I've gotten so far, and now I have to deal with ICE. You know, it wasn't part of the plan, but I was crying, and I was like, what about my baby? Like, they had cuffed me, and my 5 babies are in daycare. My youngest baby was, it was December-ish. She was maybe 5 or 6 months old. I was like, I have to make arrangements for my baby. And the guy noticed my breast pump. He goes, you're nursing? And I was like, yes, I am. I have, you know, a tiny infant, and I have these 4 kids that all depend on me. And he was like, okay. He's like, we have what's called humanitarian something, where we can give you an ankle monitor through the pendency of your case. You're going to be watched very closely, but because of your nursing baby, we're not going to take you into custody. And I was like, okay, so relieved, right? So they take me back to the ICE station, they process me, take my prints, they fit me with this ankle monitor, and I have to report to this other place on top of APMP. I'm now reporting to ASAP, which was an agency contracted to monitor immigrants on, you know, in immigration proceedings. So they're gonna do home visits twice a week. I had to go in there and check up on my ankle monitor, every now and then. It was this whole other system. So now I'm dealing with APMP and ISAP is what it was called, Intensive Supervision Agency, some shit like that. It was for ICE, and then this is for the state. So I now have 2 agencies closely watching me, and thought, okay, well, this is just part of the deal. It's part of cleaning up the mess. So now I'm gonna do this, and I'm carrying around this ankle monitor, but at least I get to be with my kids. So about 3 or 4 weeks went by, no problems, no issues. I'm reporting, I'm working, I got the kids, everything's going gravy. But at the time, I was in the middle of some very hot custody proceedings. And when I tell you hot, I mean this case was ugly. And I had filed for custody of my 2 youngest babies before I was even charged. So this was a very long case. I was actually taking him to court for termination of his rights based on abandonment. He hadn't seen the kids for over 6 months. He hadn't exercised any parent time. The baby didn't know him. He met her maybe once or twice when she was born, and then he just never cared to show up for her. So I ventured out of the custody proceedings and I filed for termination of rights. In my mind, the termination of rights was another court case I had to take care of. You know, I took care of my criminal ones, I gotta take care of my custody ones, and now I gotta finish these little criminal ones too. Like, I was just going down the line and taking care of my shit so I could get my life back in order. At the time, I didn't know this, but the father of my kids and his family were the ones working with the West Valley City Police Department and ICE, and they were the ones that arranged my pickup that day at the police station. But I was clueless. I didn't know. I didn't even know that they knew I had been picked up by ICE. I didn't disclose it to them. You know, I was just wearing my ankle monitor, doing my thing, taking care of my shit, working. And so I had a court hearing that morning for termination of parental rights for my 2 youngest babies with Walter. And business as usual, you know, I went with one of my friends. I got off work early. I had to pick up the kids after the hearing. I mean, was doing, you know, just living my regular life. So I got through security and I'm waiting on my hearing, and I'm just like chilling, waiting, and I just feel somebody tap my shoulder. And I turned around and it's my ICE agent. And I was just like, truly, before he even said a word to me, I knew he was there to arrest me. I just knew, like, they don't just come and pop up, like. And he was with 3 ICE agents. And they're like, can we talk to you over here? And I was like, yes, why can't we talk here? And I believe, now looking back, that they didn't want to arrest me publicly because there's other people there. And, you know, they had the ICE shirts, ICE on their back. And I think this was during the time where it was getting a lot of bad press, you know, where ICE was going to arrest people at court hearings. So they ushered me into this little room where you meet with your lawyer, and they're explaining to me that your custody has been redetermined. And I was like, why? Like, I haven't violated the ankle monitor. Everything's going fine. I'm coming to court for my kids. I'm working. I'm going to school. I have my kid, like, my daughter is nursing. You guys said you wouldn't take me because I'm nursing. And he goes, you're not nursing your daughter. You don't even have custody of your kids. Let's go, Anna. Cut the shit. Stop trying to play us. And I was like, what? Like, what the fuck is going on? So, you know what? I just shut up. I was like, they're already here. Their decision has been made. Nothing I say is going to change the outcome. So they cuffed me and they took me through the basement. But before they could take me, the judge actually ordered them to bring me back up because I was there for a hearing. And so the judge makes everybody leave the room. At this point, the father of my kids is there. He hasn't seen me, so I didn't know that they knew what was happening, but the judge addresses me and lets me know very apologetically. Like, I felt like he felt bad for me. He said my case would be dismissed, but if I was able to file it at a later time, I'm welcome to do so. God bless and good luck. And then they took me and they took me back to the ICE holding place and they booked me into jail. And I just kept thinking, like, what the fuck is going on? So let me tell you about the car right there. So the ICE agents just start telling me that I don't have custody of my kids. They've received all this information. They know that I try to play them. They know that I'm not nursing my daughter. And I was just like, there's literally a breast pump with frozen milk in my car that I can show you right now. But they did not want to hear anything I had to say. It was a very different treatment than I got the first time I met with them. So I was very perplexed. I was like, but you know what? I can't do nothing about it. They drove me, called my mom, and I was like, this is it. This is fucking it. So they tell me, look, you are not eligible for bond because you're an aggravated felon. And we decided to take away your ankle monitor. So this means that you will have to remain in jail for the remainder of your case. And that can take years. Now, keep in mind, I was eligible for a U visa. I had intentions of filing for it. I had a plan. I had an immigration lawyer on standby because we knew that this was a possibility. We just didn't know it was going to happen so quick or why it happened the way that it happened. And so at the time, I'm just sitting there in a jail cell, like, I'm tired. I was fucking tired. I was tired of all the cases. I felt like no matter what, no matter how hard I try to redeem myself, how hard I try to come back from what I did, it's over. I will never win. I can never redeem myself in the eyes of the system. Once I beat, I'm done with district court. Now I gotta go through immigration court for the same charges and plead my case and have my life dissected all over again. That I was just like, I'm tired. So I signed a deportation order. Aside being tired, I was fucking sad and scared that my daughter was being taken from me. And then I was scared for all of my kids, but my daughter hit differently because she was nursing. She physically needed me. She relied on me. So it was a different sense of desperation that I was like, and they told me, if you sign here, we can have you on the next plane out in 2 days. You could be reunited with your kids in 3 days. So I was like, bet, say less. Like, I'll go back to Mexico. I'll find a way, but I'm gonna be with my kids. I'll sign it. And I signed it. And I said, I'm done. I'm done. You guys win. You win. Now, mind you, at the time, I still didn't understand why they took away my ankle monitor. Because I was complying. I was being transparent. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. And I had suspicions that somebody meddled with it, that I later confirmed a couple years later. What had happened is that the family of the father of my kids had been working feverishly. When I say feverishly, I mean around the fucking clock to either get me thrown in jail or get me deported. They were the ones behind the first call. And when they found out that ICE released me, they went onto my social media, or they found out why ICE released me, right? I'm assuming that ICE explained to them, she's nursing, she's on humanitarian bond, whatever. And so it wasn't enough for them to throw me to ICE. They wanted me incarcerated. So what they did was they went to my social media. They took pictures of me with my friends. They took pictures of me. I had gone to Vegas with one of my girlfriends, and I had taken my breast pump. I had been out of a couple bars, and they took all those pictures and they sent them to ICE. They said she doesn't even have custody of her kids. At the time, I had prepared a guardianship for my older 3 kids in case I went to prison or was deported. This guardianship left my mother in charge of them legally in case I was gone, and I had done that for the purpose of my criminal cases or my deportation. Well, they sent that guardianship to ICE and said, look, she signed her kids away to her mother. She doesn't even live with them. She doesn't support them, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you'll see the emails here shortly. This person, by the name of Michelle, who we know, Michelle she sent email after email until she applied enough pressure for them to revoke that ankle monitor. So she convinced them that I was a threat to society, that I was harassing her family because I was taking my baby daddy to court, that I was illegal, that I was working illegally, which I wasn't, that I didn't have custody of my kids, that I wasn't nursing. And not the fact that I was nursing is the thing that is what had kept me out of ICE detention. But she sent pictures and convinced them that I wasn't. And they weren't willing to listen to me. I think at that point they had received so much hate mail, or not hate mail, but emails and pressure from his family that they just said, fuck it, let's go get her. And I didn't find out about them until a couple years after my deportation. And that was another reason why I just said it's time to go, because I felt like there were so many people working against me in Salt Lake that no matter what I did, I wouldn't be able to come back from everything I had done. And coming to Mexico was kind of like a fresh start for me. I thought, I'll go to Mexico, I'll get the kids, and we'll start over. Nobody will know what I did. Nobody needs to know. This changes so much. I'm a changed person, which at the time I was. I had grown, I had learned, I had realized how much those crimes had cost me and my family and my kids. I mean, it had stripped me from my legal status. So I know as part of my TikTok story, a lot of people were interested in Michelle and what she did, and she received a lot of hate, and Walter received a lot of hate, which everybody's entitled to their opinion. I completely own the fact that I was deported because I committed crimes. Now, the way that I was deported and the timing of my deportation was due to the father of my kids and his family. And had they not interfered, things would have played out anyway at their own time. I think it wouldn't have been such a hard blow to my children if they had just let justice work on its own. And I'm not here to tell you that I'm a victim of my crimes, but I'm here to share awareness on the fact that ICE can be used as a tool against you. If there are people out there who know your information, who know your status, who know your situation, and they apply enough pressure to ICE, they can come and get you. And that's exactly. So I get to Mexico and I find out I cannot be reunited with my kids expeditiously. And I think most people would have just taken the L and said, you know, I fucked up, I got deported, and I won't be able to see my kids anymore. That's what a lot of people do here. Everybody I've met here that has kids in the US, I can't see them because my baby mama doesn't let me see them, because their dad doesn't send them to me. But I wasn't complacent with that. I said, I thought, fuck that. For as hard as I have fought to get through those criminal cases to avoid prison time, it was all for my kids, to be with my kids. And now you're telling me, because I'm in Mexico, I can't see them? That wasn't good enough for me. So, with the help of my family and my amazing lawyer, Corey Wall, we kept fighting for custody. A separate episode on the details of the custody case and how we did it and what we filed. But fast forward to a year and a half, they were finally returned to me. His rights were terminated, and ironically, the same judge that dismissed my case for termination of parental rights on the day that I was arrested by ICE at the courthouse is the same judge that ended up terminating his rights about 2 years later, once they were back in Mexico with me. And for some reason that was very satisfying to me, because they took away my opportunity to petition that to the courts and to share and to use my voice for my kids as to why they should have been set free from their father, so to speak. And my children suffered a lot, specifically the babies, because of their father fighting to keep them from me for his own immigration gain. And I went through a long process of proving to the courts how he was using my kids as pawns, why they were better off with me, why they should have never been taken from me. If my criminal charges were not a reason for them to be taken from me, why was deportation? Why was deportation is simply relocation from one home to another home. People move out of state all the time and they don't lose custody of their kids. They're still entitled to some type of parent time. It's the same thing for deported parents, but a lot of them don't know that. A lot of the times they look at there's no way the courts are gonna help me. I've been deported. I was there illegally, or I lost my legal standing. Why would the courts help me? They're legally obligated to, for the well-being of those children. Those children are U.S. citizens that deserve both parents in their life, that suffer when they are abruptly separated from their primary custodial parent. I was my daughter's only parent since she was born. She was taken from me simply because I was being deported. Now there will be some argument that no, well, you got deported because you committed crimes and you deserve this and blah blah blah. But yes, sure, but she didn't. She was completely innocent in all of this, so there should be a system set in place for the children. How the children can stay in contact with both parents despite deportation. How we can lessen the blow to them during the separation of the family when immigration is dipping in to take a parent. I was the sole provider for my children. I was the only parent. So once I got deported, my children ended up with my family. They ended up on public assistance. The state was helping with food stamps, childcare, because I was no longer there to provide. They were left to my family, who all of a sudden had to provide for 5 kids. Their fathers were not fit to take them, even though one of them was fighting to do so. And so, the system really failed, because you're not doing a public service by removing this parent expeditiously, because then these children end up on state benefits. They end up from home to home. These children are U.S. citizens that you should be protecting, that you should be ensuring are okay despite deportation. Anyway, I won't get too political on that, or my views and thoughts on ICE and how they process, but that is the story of the girl in the MugShot. And it's not a pretty story. It's not entirely a story that I'm proud to share bits of.
as far as the crimes. It's not something that I'm over here shouting from the rooftops, but I've made peace with it. I've made peace with my mistakes. I've made peace with the facts that people will continue to judge me for the rest of my life on those mistakes, and that I will have lifelong consequences of those mistakes. I recently lost my job here in Puerto Vallarta because of sharing my story on TikTok and because of those crimes. In that news article, I still have people talking about it, judging, being hateful, and thinking that everything that happened to me I deserved, and perhaps it's true. But everything that happened to me, I've turned into something good. Something good came out of everything that happened. I grew, I learned, I made different choices, I rebuilt a different life. My children are all home, and I'm now sharing the story to light the way for other people in similar shoes. Because I know I'm not the only person out there that has committed white collar crimes. And even if they're not white collar, I know I'm not the only immigrant with a green card that is facing deportation, that will face deportation, that will face separation from their kids, that have already been separated from their kids. There's so many parts of my story that can help someone else. And I no longer carry the shame of the deportation, or the felonies, or the fact that I was a thief, or the MugShot. I used to hate this MugShot. I mean, it's not very flattering. I used to hide from this article. I hated that this article existed. And now actually I use it as a way to quickly explain my story. I mean, if people ever ask you, what did you do? Google me. Google will tell you what I did. Google will tell you why I was deported. But there's obviously, my side of the story. There's my reasonings. And I'm careful when I have to be careful when I tell the story, because although I'm explaining to you why I did what I did and what my reasonings and what my thinking was at the time and how I justified it to myself, I'm not saying that I was right. I'm not saying that I'm excused for what I did. But a lot of times when we understand why someone does what they do, it's easier to heal, it's easier to understand and to see them as a human being, not just the person in this article, not just the thief, not just a scammer, not just this, not just that, not just a felon, not just an illegal. We all have stories, and this is mine. Thank you for tuning in. I'm open to your questions, comments. What you guys want to know next? We'll be uploading a lot more here on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed to my Instagram, I am moving my platform there from TikTok. As you all know, unfortunately, I was recently banned from TikTok because my story made a lot of people uncomfortable. So I'm here on YouTube, hoping that this will be a more welcoming platform and I'm able to piece everything together better for you guys with more explanation and with more depth. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.